These are the 12 most common problems with homes here in the Boise housing market. So every time a client of mine gets an inspection when buying or selling a home here in Boise, I write down every single inspection item mentioned by the inspector, and then I categorize them according to 3 broad categories: big ticket items, moderate fixes, and then what I call pocket change. So last week, I decided to go back 2 years and look at every single transaction and every single inspection item mentioned by the inspectors. I categorized them according to those 3 broad categories, and then I narrowed the long list down to the 12 most commonly recurring items. So these are the 12 most common problems that you'll find with homes here in the Boise housing market. So I'm gonna put on my suit and give you a little tour of my house to show you what these items actually look like. So today I'm gonna be Brett, and just as a disclaimer, I am not an inspector. This is just for illustration purposes only. So the number 1 big ticket item is the roof. Now in Boise, nearly all the roofs are 30-year shingle roofs. They're not made out of ceramic, but these tar shingles. And what will happen is after about 20 years, you'll begin to see some of the threads poke through on the shingles. The granules will begin to detach themselves from the tar on the shingles, and you can have other problems develop as well. So a common problem is on the roof jacks here, you'll see the rubber seal will crack and detach itself from the flange, and you'll have a gap that can actually have water intrude into your attic from the top of your roof. And another common problem is roofs are sometimes missing these crickets, which pushes the water away from the skylights or the vents on your roof, or they may be missing flashing, which diverts the water away from the siding of your house. Roof fixes are not cheap. I recently got a quote for a client just for some crickets and flashing, and that was $4,900. If you're gonna replace the entire roof on a 1,300 square foot home, that'll run you about $12,000, and the price will just go up from there. Number 2 on the big ticket item list is the floor. Now I see lots of problems with floors here in Boise, and there's basically 4 different types of floors that you'll find: laminate, vinyl, hardwood, and carpet. New homes typically come with vinyl or engineered hardwood floors. Some builders will put carpet in the bedrooms, others will just put the vinyl and the hardwood throughout the entire house. Now there's basically 3 main problems that can happen to your floor. They can either scratch, swell, or stain. Here's an example of a laminate plank. Laminate is the cheapest of the floors, runs at about $1.50 per square foot and up without installation. And it's made of basically kind of like a cardboard or sawdust substance, and then a hard surface on the top. So what will happen is if water seeps between the 2 planks, the seams will swell, and that's irreparable. You actually have to replace these planks. Vinyl planks, or luxury vinyl planks, LVP, is made out of plastic. So it's 100% plastic, so it's 100% waterproof, and this is a really great option because you don't have to worry about water at all. You can dump a 5-gallon bucket of water on this, and nothing's gonna happen to your floor. Now when it comes to quality, your laminate is gonna be on the lowest end of the scale. You can find it at Lowe's for about $1.50 per square foot without installation, and that will go up from there. Next will be your carpet at around $3 to $4 per square foot without installation and up. Then you'll have LVP, which is usually around $4 to $5, and then your hardwood is the most expensive at around $6, $7, and $8 and up, excluding installation. The 3rd most common big ticket item that I frequently see here in Boise is the HVAC system, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. Now the average lifespan of an HVAC is about 25 years. So if you're buying a home that was built before the year 2000 and it has the original system, you should plan on having to replace the system in the coming years. Now if you're lucky, all you might have to replace is the capacitor, which is about a $400 to $800 fix. But if there's a crack or any kind of a major problem, as was the case with my furnace last fall, you'll have to replace the entire system. Now I got a smoking deal on my furnace. I replaced the furnace for $3,600. My HVAC guy said the air conditioner was working like a champ, so he said just call me if the air conditioner goes out, and I'll come back later and replace just the air conditioner. So if you need to replace the whole system though, plan on about $7,000 to $10,000. Now, again, the average lifespan is about 25 years. Sometimes they can last longer. I've seen them go for 30, 40 years. Sometimes they'll go for even less. I've heard of people having to replace their whole system after about 7 or 10 years. So because this really is an expensive replacement, you really want to be sure that you take care of your HVAC system. Most HVACs in Boise are going to be found in the garage, as is the case here in my house. And because there's a lot of dust and other elements, you really want to be sure that you're switching out the filters every 3 to 6 months so you don't put extra strain on the system. Now, before I move on to moderate size inspection items that I commonly see, I wanted to mention 3 other less common big ticket items that you should still be aware of as well. And the first is a well. If you are not connected to the city, you're going to have an individual well. And if there's a problem with your well, it's an expensive fix. In Southwest Boise, where we are right now, there's been a lot of development over the past 10 to 15 years. So we've been drawing a lot of water out of the ground. And so a lot of the homeowners in this area have had to replace their well. My parents had to replace theirs this spring, and it cost them $30,000. So if you're buying a house that is not on city water, you're gonna wanna do a well test. Cost you about $600, but it is well worth it. Another big ticket item that thankfully is less common, but you should still be aware of, is sometimes your sewer lines can fail. So I'm at the access point of my sewer lines. This is PVC, but if your house was built between the 1930s to the 1980s, most likely your sewer lines are built with cast iron pipes that go from the house out to the street. So if that's the case, I would suggest and recommend getting a sewer scope. A plumber will come out and put a camera down into your sewer lines to see if the pipes are corroded or if there's tree roots growing up through them. If they're in bad condition and they need to be replaced, it's an expensive fix. A couple years ago, I had a client who had sewer lines that needed to be replaced, and he was quoted $28,000 to do the job. So the third, not very common, but still big ticket item that I see here in the Treasure Valley is homes will sometimes fail a radon test. Now, radon is a poisonous gas that comes up from the ground and goes into your house. You can't smell it, you can't taste it. But the EPA says that it's the second leading cause of lung cancer, second to smoking, in the United States. Now, it's not a huge issue here in the Treasure Valley. I went back and looked at my records. I average about 1 home per year that my clients buy that fails a radon test. So I had one in January that had a 4.2 picocuries reading. The EPA says anything over 4.0 needs to be remediated. Last year I had another client whose home came in at a 5.4 picocurie reading, so we had to remediate that home as well. So about, I would say on average, I get about 1 home that fails a radon test here in the Treasure Valley. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to remediate radon. What they do is they put a fan in the crawl space, and that just sucks the gas out of the crawl space, and then they blow it out the side of the house so that you're not breathing it in. And then they may put a new vapor barrier in your crawl space as well to keep the gas away from the living quarters. My clients last year told me they remediated the radon in their crawl space for about $2,850, and that was for a 1,475 square foot home. Now, there's 4 items in the moderate category that I frequently see, the most common of which is the window seals. Now, pretty much any window in Boise is going to be a double-paned window unless the house is from the 1920s or before. And between these 2 panes, there's a seal and a gas that prevents any moisture from accumulating between the 2 window panes. When the rubber seal breaks, the gas evaporates and then condensation starts to form, and then you have to replace the window. Now, it's a purely cosmetic issue, and it's actually not that expensive to replace the window panes, but it does add up if you have a number of windows that you need to replace in one house. I had a client once who had 12 windows with broken seals in his house that he needed to replace, and the bid that we got for those 12 windows of varying sizes was about $2,400. So about $200 give or take just to replace the window panes. Number 2 in the moderate category is what I generally call safety issues. Now, there's a number of problems that can arise under this general heading. The most common of which I find frequently is that the GFCI outlets aren't working properly. A GFCI outlet is basically a circuit breaker that trips the electricity if there's a power surge or if there's a problem. So if you are drying your hair and you drop your hair dryer in the sink, you don't get electrocuted. The They started putting these outlets in homes in the 1970s. So depending on the year of your home, you'll find these outlets in your garage, in your bathroom, and in your kitchen. It's not an expensive fix, but it is an issue that you want to address because it is a safety issue. I found that most people don't like to get electrocuted. Another problem under the safety heading is the fire alarm. Most common problem with fire alarms is that it's not hardwired into the power grid of the house, or there's just no fire alarms at all to begin with. It's also important to have CO2 detectors in your house because CO2 can seep through your furnace if there's a problem with your HVAC system. The third safety issue that I frequently find here in Boise is that the I-beam on garage doors is either missing or not working. Now you guys know what those beams are. If the garage door is going down and you trip the beam, the garage door goes back up so that you don't get crushed. According to a recent Gallup poll, they found that 9 out of 10 people don't like to get crushed. So the third most common problem under the moderate category relates to the bathroom fan, and it actually occurs more often than I would expect. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so here I am in my attic, and before I go on, let's just be honest. How many realtor YouTube videos have you seen where the realtor actually goes up into his attic of his house? So if you're enjoying this video, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up. It's about 120 degrees up here. So here I am just above my bathroom, and you can see behind me here is a vent. Now this vent connects up to the fan that sucks all of the moist air out of my bathroom, and it should go through this vent and then blow out through my roof into the open air. Now believe it or not, more often than I would expect, these vents are actually missing. And so the fan just sucks up the moist air from the bathroom, and then the moist air gets trapped here in the attic and it has nowhere to go, and it settles on the insulation, and that can cause major problems down the road, causes mold and other problems. So if you don't catch it soon enough, it can actually cause some major problems to your house. So I was just up in the attic, so I gotta come down into the belly of the house now and talk about some of the problems, most common problems that you'll find in the crawl space. Now about 95% of homes, I would say, in Boise are built with crawl spaces rather than on slabs. There's a couple advantages to that. First of all, it's just much easier to fix anything if there's a problem. So if you have a problem with your ducts or your plumbing, you can fix that fairly easily. The disadvantage to a crawl space, though, is that it's another area for there to be mold potentially and or other rodents and insects. A common problem that you'll find in the crawl space, unfortunately I can't illustrate in my house because I don't have it here, but you'll frequently find that there's moisture or water damage in the subfloor of the crawl space. And this is frequently just below the bathroom or the kitchen. So there's a water leak, and then that water is dripping through the subfloor. And if it continues long enough, it turns into mold, and then it can flake down, and then it can actually break through if it lasts for too long. So the way to deal with that, if it's really bad, is you just cut out the old rotten stuff and you replace it with a new piece. Now, I also want to note that inspectors are not mold remediators. So if they see something that they suspect might be mold, they'll call it out and they'll just flag it as possible microbial growth. It could just be the discoloration of the wood as it sat outside before it was put into your home. So if you do see that in an inspection report, you're going to want to bring in a mold remediator to take a closer look to make sure that it actually is mold and actually does need to be remediated. Now the third category is what I call pocket change items, and the most common items in this category relate to the siding. Now in Boise, you'll see about 4 different types of siding. See vinyl siding, wood siding, fiber cement board siding, and stucco. I would say about 70% of homes have wood siding, and generally the problems relating to wood sidings relate to where the sprinklers hit the bottom of the siding. The wood will typically swell a little bit, or the weed eater will hit it and you'll have some damage on the lower pieces of your siding. Typically though, this is just a cosmetic issue and most buyers won't do anything unless there's major damage to the siding as a whole. Second item under the pocket change category is a leaking water heater. Now commonly you'll see that there's leaks where the pipes come in and out of the water heater. But more commonly, you'll see leaks in the expansion tanks of the water heater. Now, in Ada County, you don't actually have to have an expansion tank on a water heater, which is why I don't have one on mine. In Canyon County, it is required. And frequently what you'll see is that there's leaks in the expansion tank. This is an easy fix though. It's about 50 or 70 bucks at Lowe's to buy an expansion tank. You can just do that on your own. If you need to replace the entire water heater though, you're looking at about $1,200 to $1,500. It's also very common to see problems with doors. You'll see doors that are damaged with dings or nicks. Probably the most common issue that I find though is that doors that are coming from the garage into the house are supposed to be on self-closing hinges, and the door has to be a fire-rated door so that if there's a fire in the garage, it takes 45 minutes for it to actually get into your house. So if the garage door doesn't have an automatic hinge, it's an easy fix. You can buy a set of 3 self-closing hinges at Lowe's for $25. Number 11, some of the common pocket change items that you'll find in the crawl space include fallen insulation bats that just need to be pushed back up into the subfloor. Sometimes the vapor barrier is folded back and just needs to be pushed back or is missing in some places. Or you may see some debris in the crawl space that needs to be cleaned up. And it's not uncommon for your air ducts to fall down into your crawl space. They should be attached to your subfloor, but it's a really easy fix. And finally, there's a number of pocket change items relating to the outside of your house that I commonly see. First of all, it's not uncommon for inspectors to note that the grading of a house is sloping towards the home rather than away from it. It should be sloping outward so water drains away from your house and is not dripping into your crawl space. Easy fix, just make sure that the sloping is going away from your home. Concrete cracks. Nearly every single driveway in Idaho is cracked, so there's nothing to do there, not uncommon. And you'll also see cracks in your foundation, like this crack here. They say that if the crack is 1/4 inch wide or less, there's nothing that you need to do. 3 quick words before you go. Number 1, the inspector is not going to check your sprinklers in the winter because there's no irrigation water then. It's also usually an additional fee to check the sprinklers during the summer. Number 2, he's not gonna check your air conditioning unit if the temperature is below 50 degrees. That could damage your unit. And number 3, if you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button so you can bookmark my channel and come back and find me more easily next time.